sometimes, teenagers think I'm not interesting, so how will I ever have something to say? And so what we really reassure our students and their parents of is one, that everybody's interesting, and I genuinely believe that to be true, but also this is part of the work that we're doing as early as ninth grade to really create a thoughtful, intentional narrative in partnership with the student. And that doesn't mean crafting the perfect applicant, because that's a fallacy. The perfect applicant is the best version of you, the best version of your child.
Welcome to the Company of Dads podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sullivan. We're focused on lead dads, working moms, and how small changes at home or work can have a big impact on their lives. Each episode promises to deliver actionable advice on some area of concern at home or at work. Short, direct, again, actionable. 5 questions, 5 answers. Today, our guest is Lindsay Tanne, founder of LogicPrep, a globally recognized educational consultancy. Provides strategic test prep, comprehensive college guidance, and academic support. She started it as a student at this place called Harvard, and she now has a team of 50 college advisors, essay coaches, and tutors who have helped thousands of families navigate the highly competitive, perhaps even stressful, admissions landscape. What's her secret? She yells a lot at the parents and students equally. No, that's not true. She doesn't yell at all, she tells me. And we're going to talk today about what she does to ramp down that anxiety and still help those kids find the college that is the right fit for them. Welcome, Lindsay, to the Company of Dads podcast.
It's very good to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'll try not to yell.
You don't yell, right? You don't yell. I mean, but if you yelled equally, it would be okay. Like if you were
Well,
like,
let's see.
I'm just saying, maybe it's a new model. Like, and you could, I don't know. You can use it for free. If it works, it's yours. All right. Question 1. Again, this is, kids want to go to college. It's become something that they fixate on at times. It's stressful. As you've said, before we got on there, it doesn't have to be that way. So question 1, what's the most helpful and the least helpful thing fathers and mothers can do to help their children in the college admissions process?
I think the most helpful thing that parents can do is just be a support, be a sounding board, be a cheerleader, not a taskmaster. That might be the least helpful thing.
So like cheerleader, like, let's go Harvard. No, not that kind of
Doesn't have
cheerleader.
to be Harvard, but I think that this process can become so all-consuming and doesn't need to, but it needs to be boundaried, and that's part of the role of the parent to kind of exercise some restraint and say, I'm not going to bring up the college thing in every car ride, around every, breakfast conversation, to really kind of manage themselves, to be there as consistent, loving reminders that their children are good, no matter what their outcome is or what kind of the achievement is that they're aiming for, that they love them, they're here, and they want to help.
Okay. Now, so if they're not talking about the college process in every car ride, do they talk about like the AP test in every car ride? What are they?
There's a lot of interesting stuff in the world. Maybe talk about like what TV shows they're watching, who they're hanging out with, what they're doing over the weekend. I know this is like novel stuff, but teenagers are really interesting. At least I think so. And so ask questions.
I love it. I love it. What's the flip side to that question? Because I asked it as the most and the least helpful thing that they can do. So, talk about like, be a little prescriptive as to what parents should sort of bear in mind.
Yeah, I think I would say talk less about outcomes, more about effort. Really focus on helping your children to reframe success as growth and self-discovery. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to model that. Um, I think you as a parent can also really imbue this process with fun if you so choose. So, for example, College visits are an amazing bonding
Yeah.
opportunity to get to hang out with your kid and get on the road and go see a sports game, like, or go see a theater performance if that's what your child's into. Um, so to really kind of elevate and shift your mindset and to get to a place of this could actually be really fun. And also, the days with your children at home are limited. This is kind of the final chapter, so enjoy it.
I love it. Question two. My oldest is in ninth grade, and fortunately, my wife and I have already practiced what you're preaching here, and that we focus more on the effort, on the studying, on your grade is just a reflection on how much you know. It's not a reflection
Right.
on
Who you
who
are.
you are. Right. Again, if you get an A, well, you seem to have learned the material, and if you get a C, you seem not to have learned the material. And
Yeah.
so that's how we've been since they've been very young. But as you know better than most, teenagers, they're not listening to their parents all the time. They're in this mix with their friends. And as I point out to my daughter, your friends are lovely lovely people, but they don't know anything. They literally don't know what they're talking about. They're just parroting what
True.
they're yeah, they know
Right.
nothing. They are parroting what they've heard or seen or think is the outcome somewhere else. So question two is really, what is often the most stressful thing for children in this college process that in your experience
Mm.
they really don't need to worry about, that thing that they fixate on, and if we as parents could help them say, hey, this doesn't matter as much as it may seem to you or your friend group, what does that thing
Yeah,
mean?
I think there is so much anxious anticipation around the essay
Mm.
writing process, as it pertains to kind of the whole college application journey. I feel
Yeah.
like starting as early as ninth, 10th grade, I hear students and the parents of those students sort of lament and sort of bemoan sometimes their almost like apparent lack of bad luck and say, oh, nothing bad has happened to me. What am I going to ever write about? And so I think there's just like this, the essay has been built up for so many kids, probably because kids are talking to kids as like such a thing. And I think sometimes, teenagers think I'm not interesting, so how will I ever have something to say? And so what we really reassure our students and their parents of is one, that everybody's interesting, and I genuinely believe that to be true, but also this is part of the work that we're doing as early as ninth grade to really create a thoughtful, intentional narrative in partnership with the student. And that doesn't mean crafting the perfect applicant because that's a fallacy. The perfect applicant is the best version of you, the best version of your child. So if your child is spending their time meaningfully, deeply, thoughtfully engaged in their high school experience, trying new things over the summer, taking on leadership positions, learning new skills, there is no doubt in my mind that they will have a fabulous story to tell when the time comes.
Yeah, turn that's interesting. Kind of follow on question to that, being in the shoes of some poor college admissions officer who has to read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these essays. Obviously you're talking to these people. For them, is it just really solid writing that stands out? Is it in some cases the story? What is it? Because again, like a ninth grader doesn't know what he or she really should write about, but they think they do, and their friends tell them what they should do. But what when you're on the other end of that, what makes it?
Yeah, what makes
Yeah.
something pop? And so our team of advisors, they're actually all former admissions officers. And we have a team of essay coaches too, who are all professional
Wow.
storytellers in their
So
lives.
they're like Navy SEALs. They've kind of come to the other
I'd
side
say
here. I like
yes.
this. Yeah.
And they are pros. So they've read
Oh my
thousands
god, poor
of
people.
applications.
So much bad writing over the years.
Yeah,
Oh
right.
my
I'm
goodness.
sure that's true. And they often say that it's not the most grandiose stories that stand out. It's sometimes the most mundane, as long as it offers like a compelling window into how that student sees the world. I also think there's
Hmm.
sometimes a false sense that students have that like their college essay is supposed to be like a time capsule and say everything about them. And we sort of push back on that. I'm not sure that it needs to be a time capsule. I think it just needs to be a really beautiful open window
Huh.
into who they are today, recognizing that they might change. I think we all recognize that teenagers are not fully formed, but still present a sense of direction and cohesion around, okay, this is how I see the world, or this is kind of what's interesting to me.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you. Question three, and I don't know if this is where your team goes or not, or if this is more with the parents, but I'll throw it out there anyways. And that is, you know, how can we as parents working with a team like yours as college coaches help our children with their, mental and emotional health through these, final years of high school, of secondary school, and prepare them to go off as, happy, engaged, interesting young people into the college world?
I think, this is such an excellent opportunity to teach students how to, I would say, seek out and really benefit from support of mentors and coaches that are not their parents. I think when this goes really well from my perspective with my team, parents are in the equation as parents. As I said earlier, they're the cheerleaders, they're the coaches, they're the safe space. And in this dynamic, the parent is really empowering our advisor, our essay coach to offer expert advice and collaborate with the student and speak to that student as the or as the young adult that they're becoming.
Yeah.
And so I think when parents are feeling the stress and anxiety in their house, and I think that's inevitable, it takes really both courage and good sense to say, you know what, that's a great question. I'm not going to answer that for you. I think you should call your advisor. It's both empowering for the student and I think preserving of the relationship in the household.
I love it. That's good. Question four. When you think about the work that the students and the parents have to do to actually select a college coach, as you said, you have 50 some odd people doing this. How do they go about vetting that person? Because as we were talking, before we started recording, so much of this is parent A says to parent B, "Oh, we use so and so, and this is great," and blah blah blah, or parent A says to parent B, "We use so and so, and he was awful." But that's really meaningless because it's the experience that they had for their child in that particular moment. So for parents who are not, journalists who ask questions all the time, or not in roles where they're interviewing people to sort of get information, get a sense, how do you advise them to vet a college coach, your coaches, or others, to make sure they're the
Yeah,
correct
I
fit?
mean, I think it's a really interesting question. I think um in my view, I would look at both results and process. I think obviously outcome matters here. And so really understanding, how does this individual or this firm measure success? What does success look like for you as a family? And does it align with how this organization sees success? In other words, is it Ivy or bust, or is it more holistic than that? And then I think there's absolutely a process piece of this too, because in our best relationships, families are working alongside our team for maybe 4 years. So the
Right.
question is this someone that my child is going to respect and relate to and want to listen to? Does it feel like a partnership? Is the communication style kind of aligned with mine? To what extent will I, as a parent, be involved in this process? How much do I want to be involved in this process?
Yeah.
And I think the first step, right, is kind of that introspection as a parent. What do I want this process to look and feel like? And then does it align with, with what's being offered?
I mean, within your firm, I mean, what happens if it isn't a good fit? What happens if somebody says, "I want to work with Sally, but really Susie is the better fit"? What do you do in that process?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I think we are pretty intentional and bespoke about our matching process. And that is something, from the get-go that we really give a lot of thought to. We have a fabulous head of our college advising journey who is a former admissions officer herself. She's also a former psychotherapist. So she really thinks about kind of holistically what is going to work for this student and this family. And so I think the first thing is to really give good thought to, okay, what's going to be a good match? Then, if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, and I do think this is one of the benefits of working with a team rather than a solo practitioner for this
Mm.
process, we've got a deep bench. We can say, okay, what stylistically was not working? What could be working better? Our advisors are more or less operating out of the same playbook in terms of collective knowledge, and they're collaborating on our students' behalf. They're working off of the same curriculum, the same cadence of,
Yeah.
communication, but obviously everyone has their own vibe, their own style. And so, with the oversight of our team, a parent could say, look, like, this isn't quite working. Let me interview some other people. And that's always an option.
And I guess the flip side, it's good to know that if, one of your coaches, fouls out of the game, you've got somebody to come in off the bench. That's great. But, what if the kid is fouling out? What if the kid isn't, pulling his or her own weight? What can a parent expect to hear as feedback from that college coach that they're paying good money to help them out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is part of the job of our advisors, is to kind of flag when things maybe aren't working the way that they should be, or something seems a little bit off. And in those cases, the advisor would reach out to the parent. I think more often with curiosity, inquisitively, to say, look, this is what I've observed. This is what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? What are you
Right.
making of this behavior? Because I mean, sometimes we see things that may present as something but aren't actually that thing. So, for example, like when it comes time to work on essays, sometimes students just shut down. We see them like not want to show up for sessions. They're not handing in drafts, and I think it can easily be misinterpreted as laziness or lack of engagement, or, oh, this student isn't even interested at all.
Right.
And a lot of times it's actually quite the opposite, that the
Yeah.
student is wildly nervous and putting an enormous amount of
Overwhelmed. Yeah.
pressure, right? And so I think our advisors are particularly attuned to those dynamics, and then can approach the parent and say, hey, this is what I'm saying. What do you think? And then problem
Yeah.
solve together.
I love it. That's great. You talk, question 5, last question. This has been wonderful, but question, you talk a lot about, that shift from, fixer to coach. And that's fairly intuitive. The parents are like, I'm going to make all these problems go away. I'm going to do this for you. To the coach is like, come on, you can do this, run some laps. Let's get this out. But that's a great, thing for people to remember as sort of I'm not going to be the fixer. I'm going to be the coach. But when you think more deeply about, the parent-child relationships that have come out as good, if not better, through this problem. What a blooper. What a slip. Through this college process. Um,
Yeah.
what advice do you give to those parents to ensure that their relationship with their child is as good or better at the end of the college
Hmm.
process?
I mean, this is such an opportunity for parents to actually get to know their children better if they're open to it, because for so many children, this is the first time any adult, and these are college admissions officers as the adults, are sort of asking, like, who are you? Who do you
Yeah.
want to become? What are you interested in? And I think for some parents, if the answers that their children, come to the table with are not what they might be expecting, that can be uncomfortable or surprising.
Yeah.
But it can also be really amazing and a really great chance to say, oh, that's really cool. I'm not sure I knew that. Or how can we lean into that more? What else do I not know? And this is an opportunity, this process, I think, when done really thoughtfully and done well, for students to really shape the way that they see themselves. They're writing the story of this next chapter. And so I think hopefully parents can see it as not just a means to an end, because college is not the end, as we all know, it's just a
Right.
beginning, but as a really amazing, transformative step on the journey that's going to unfold as their child becomes the person that they're growing into.
Lindsay Tanne, founder of LogicPrep, globally recognized educational consultancy. Thank you so much for being my guest today on the Company of Dads podcast.
Thank you. This was fun.
One last thing, tell the listeners how do they find you if they want to sort of avail themselves of your services? How do they find you?
Sure. So we are LogicPrep. Our website is logicprep.com, and just shoot me an email. I always love to talk to families and hear what's on their minds. I'm Lindsay, Lindsay at logicprep.com, and I hope to connect with many of you.
Perfect. Thank you again, Lindsay. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Company of Dads podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in week after week. Just want to use this moment here to thank the people who make it possible. Number one, of course, Helder Mira, who is our podcast editor. We also have Skip Cherryholmes, who many of you know from the Lead Dad Diaries. He's taken over our social media. Terry Brennan is helping us with our audience development, and Emily Servin is there each and every day helping with the web development. I can't do any of this without an amazing board of advisors. So I just want to say thank you to all of you who help, and I want to say thank you to everyone who listens, and hopefully you'll tune in again next week. Thanks so much.